one thing leads to another. Once when I was 20, I was asked overnight whether I was willing to guide an Englishman through 300 miles of swamp and rainforest separating Colombia from Panama City. At that point, I believed bliss was an objective state that you could achieve just by opening yourself unabashedly to the world. So I always had just one word in my vocabulary for any new experience, and that was yes. So of course I said yes, and it was a horrendous passage. We were chased by the law. We were lost for 10 days with no food. My companion was down to 126 pounds. I was down to 140 pounds. It became this big adventure. And he wrote this kind of bad book about it. But he was very kind to me. And he lifted entire passages from my journals into his books. And I thought at that age, if he can write a book, this eccentric Englishman, endearing as he is, so can I. And then I spent 3 years in the Amazon as a botanical explorer, and then something changed. I wanted something new. And one day, Schultes just asked me randomly whether I was interested in going down to Haiti to infiltrate the secret societies and secure the formula of a drug used to make zombies. Well, naturally, I said yes, thinking that it would consume maybe a fortnight of my life over a spring break. It ended up consuming 4 years of my life because within 24 hours of arriving in Haiti, I experienced something that eluded me in 4 years in the Amazon, and that was a window wide open to the mystic.
Welcome back to the channel. This week's clip is going to be Dr. Wade Davis. If you're unfamiliar with his work, I suggest you look up his biography. He basically was one of the first people to go to the Amazon to try all of the different shamanistic medications in the hopes of finding different cures for ailments. This was in the 60s and 70s, which, as you would expect, has led him to some very different alternative ways of looking at reality. After we're done the clip, I'm going to be applying our expanded understanding of Ohm's law to his observations so that we can look at how energy law is influencing every aspect of your life.
So many people, when they're young, are obsessed with finding a job. Well, I always urge them to be cautious because the word job in English is derived from the old French word gober, meaning to devour. My father had a job all of his life. He called it the grind. And I used to imagine as a little boy that he came home every night just a little bit shorter. And indeed, he did. And what I encourage people to do is to never have a job. I've never had a job in my life until I was recruited to UBC at the age of 59. And even then, I was fortunate enough to be able to establish my own terms for the position. But what I have done is work and work very hard. And work has a more a nicer ring to it because it's derived from the old Anglo-Saxon word meaning to create, to inspire. And so the lesson for young people is to never have a job, but to work harder than anyone you will ever meet. And then things will come out well. Anyone who's lived a long and fruitful life will share with a young person. And that is simply that life is neither linear nor predictable. You know, I say to young people, a career is not something you put on like a coat. It's something that grows organically around you, step by step, choice by choice. Nothing is beneath you unless you make it so. Nothing is a waste of time unless you see it that way. An elderly cab driver in Vancouver can easily have as much to teach you as a sadhu in the mountains of the Himalaya, or a shaman in the Amazon, or certainly a professor at a university. And if you put yourself in the ways of opportunities, such that not in the sense of becoming an opportunist like a schemer, but simply putting yourself in the way of opportunities where there is no choice but success, you suddenly find yourself capable of achieving things that were beyond your imaginings a few short months before. One of the biggest lessons I learned, and it took a long time to understand this, was that creativity isn't an abstract thing. Creativity isn't the motivation of action, it's a consequence of action. You can't be creative if you don't do. And so what you need to do is whatever you think needs to be done, and only then ask whether it was possible or permissible. Pessimism is an indulgence, despair, an insult to the imagination, orthodoxy, the enemy of invention. Nature, I always say to young people, loves courage. Jim Whittaker, the first American to summit Everest, once told me that if you're not living on the edge when you're young, you're taking up too much space. And so what you have to do in life is kind of envision the impossible, dream the impossible, and you suddenly discover the world doesn't drag you down, it lifts you up. You jump off the cliff and you discover that you land not on rocks, but on a featherbed. And in a sense, this has always been the message of all the saints.
Another great clip. So basically what he's saying here is that in life, and saying that he's never had a job is misleading. What he's saying is be careful not to make the idea of finding the perfect job your whole identity. Because everyone's going to have to work. Everyone has to pay their way through life, and you're going to have to do things that you don't necessarily enjoy to survive. That's just the way that it is. Don't accept the idea that a better job is going to be what makes everything work out fine for you in the long run. Jobs, by virtue of what they are, have limited potential. Everyone who just becomes a slave to the grind by accepting their job as who they are, it's a terrible, terrible fate. And the reason jobs have limited potential is because if current is constant, this is the second phase of energy law, if current is constant and resistance decreases, potential difference decreases. The second that you choose to go and take a job and accept that as who you are, you have followed the path of least resistance. Because it is much harder, like in the Steve Jobs clip that we showed, to build a company. It's way harder to build the company than to work at the company, which is why if you accept the lesser resistance of the paid position over the more resistance of the actual building of the company, the potential you get is less. The greater potential goes to the person who overcomes the more resistance. And the person who created the whole organization that you are working for should always get more than the person who's just working at the organization. That's just how natural law works. If you take on more resistance, there should be more reward. And anytime there's a system that tries to stop that, it self-destructs, because there's no reason for anyone to risk if there is no more reward for overcoming that extra resistance. Jobs are a very, very tricky thing. But like he says, what you need to do is work. You need to have something that you're passionate about, that you can put your energy in during the hours where you're not doing whatever it is you have to do to maintain yourself. These are the hours that we call the defining third. In every life, you can sleep for 8 hours to maintain mental harmony. You need to work for 8 hours to sustain yourself. And what you do with the last 8 hours are the third of your life that is going to determine your growth. So the next point he makes is that creativity isn't an abstract thing. It is the side effect. A lot of young people want to do something artistic. They have a need to express themselves. But what he's saying is absolutely correct. Creativity is your expanded potential. It's your potential expanding that we view as being creative. But it can only expand through the process of doing. So if resistance is constant and current increases, potential difference must increase. Well, that expanded potential is viewed as creativity. The more you do, the more creative you will become, because you are training the neural pathways in your brain that is the hardware that you need to accomplish goals. So people think of creative people as these kind of shamanistic, magical people that are so talented. But really, the more you do, the more creative you become, because creativity itself is a side effect of your expanding potential difference that you are establishing through the process of doing. Once again, the graphics that you've seen in this video are what we call Ohm's wheels of life. If you'd like to learn more about this expanded understanding of Ohm's law and how it relates to other aspects of your experience, be sure to visit our website, Seniorthinktank.ca, and download some of the resources there. Watch more of the videos on this channel. If you like the content that you're getting here, be sure to like and subscribe and share it with your friends so that they can also start getting in tune with this new version of energy law, which we believe is truly a life-changing thing once you begin to harmonize with it and understand that energy law itself is the guiding principle that is governing every aspect of your life. See you next week.